We'll see what happens.
Yalla? So, okay. So John is a Palestinian, young, handsome man, theologian, Christian, Protestant, okay, or Christian, living in Jerusalem, and he's also working in a center called the Roasting Center. It's a center for interfaith or interreligious dialogue and peace building. Okay, and he will present the work of this center, where a team of Jewish, Muslim, and Christian people are working together. I won't say much or more. I give you the floor.
I apologize, I cannot relate to you in French, and it caused a bit of an issue. But the way I can relate to you is when I've been learning about the Protestant French community here, which is less than 2%, it made me think about my Christian community, we're also less than 2%. So I can relate with that. But I also tried the cheese, the very strong cheese today. It's not, I cannot relate to it. I'm sorry. But maybe with time I will improve. I will explain a bit about my journey and then a bit more about the Roasting Center. And I will keep it brief and short because I know we've also had a bit of a long day and soon we will have dinner. But if you need or if you want to ask questions, you're more than welcome to do so. Are you with us or are you with them? This is a question that my classmate asked me when I was probably 13 or 14 years old. You see, I'm Palestinian Christian, but I went to an Israeli Jewish school in Jerusalem. And my classmate couldn't understand, who do I belong to? I'm Palestinian, but I'm going to an Israeli Jewish school. I speak Hebrew. But for him I'm also confusing because I'm Christian. And for some reason they think Christian is more connected to the West. But what he was really asking is, who am I? Because who you are will determine your political stances, your theological stances about the Israeli-Palestinian context. At the time, I was 13, 14, so I said, I don't have to choose. But I didn't really know what to answer him. And it bothered me. And I remember I went home and I went to speak to my father. And my father, every evening, he sits on the couch reading his books. And I asked him, I told him about this. I said, Father, this happened to me today at school. What do I say? You know, he's reading the book and he's wearing his glasses and he looks at me like this. And he says, what are you going to do about it? I was expecting for him to give me an answer so I can then go and say to my classmates, easy, quick. But he said to me, what are you going to do about it? I said, I don't know. And then he gave me the books. He has a library. He gave me many books. He said, read these books and come back to me. My father's a professor. So I started reading about the history. Who is the Palestinian people? What is the story of my family? I read also about politics. What is the situation that I'm living in? And I also read a lot of theology. What does the gospel say about the reality I live in? Because I was also hearing different Christian interpretations of what is to be done in Israel and Palestine. And we listened to it a bit this morning. So I had to figure out who I am. And I discovered, specifically reading theology, that Jesus is not only the Messiah that is here to reconcile us between us, but he's also the Messiah of justice. And these two things are something that I've always tried to hold. Justice and reconciliation. A few years later on, I was about 18, and I went on the bus to the airport. And at the checkpoint to the airport, the security guard came on the bus. And he checked all the IDs of the people, and he took the young men who were on the bus, their IDs, and went off. After 5 minutes, he comes back on the bus, and he says, gives it to everyone. I was the only Palestinian on the bus. And he says, John Moulin, come with me. So I went. And he couldn't understand who I am, because I could speak with him Hebrew. And it was frustrating him that he couldn't place me in a box. And he got aggressive, pointing the gun. Not enough. Bring 3 more security people, take me to a room, and strip search me. This caused great anger in me. Right? I was in a journey of discovering who I am, thinking about justice and reconciliation. This drove me crazy, because I was humiliated. So I went back home after the journey, and I told my parents about this. And once again, both my parents said, okay, well, what are you going to do about this? So I decided that I want to dedicate my life to get rid of these systems, the oppression of my people, but do it in a way that promotes reconciliation. Thinking about liberation and reconciliation as 2 sides of the same coin. And this is what I've been doing ever since. Fast forward to October 23. Not just me, but my family are very vocal about the Palestinian cause for justice and reconciliation. A week after October the 7th, Israeli society was very, very angry. They had seen what happened on October 7th, they themselves traumatized, but they were also seeking revenge. A fascist right-wing group tried to find some of my family members, because it's not just me, but my other family members are very vocal. We speak a lot. And luckily, they tried to find my father and my brother in their offices, but they couldn't find them. And luckily, the neighbor in the offices is Jewish. He met this group who were trying to find my brother and my father. He quickly called the family and said, when this happened, don't come to the offices. So we didn't. We went back home and didn't leave for about 3-4 days. Because we didn't know, maybe they can find us at home, or if we leave. So I also understood that if you want to be involved in true justice and reconciliation, the one at least that I understand in the scriptures and the gospel, it's also dangerous. You will pay a price. Right? Discovering who you are, acting upon it, and possibly paying a price. This is my story, but I think this is also the story of the organization I work for. I work for the Rossing Center for Education and Dialogue. We are trying to promote a better vision, a better reality for the Palestinian people, for the Israeli people as well. And we do so through the education system, trying to teach principals and teachers themselves to promote these values within the Israeli education system. And at the moment trying to push back against the fascist right-wing tendencies in Israeli society. And at the same time, to promote and empower the Palestinian schools that are in the state of Israel. This work is for Palestinians and Israelis who have citizenship. And we are trying to give them tools to be essentially facilitators in the classroom and give them anti-racism tools and skills. And this is the work that we are still doing, although with lots of challenges until today. That's the education part. The more dialogue part is we are trying to encourage specifically university students to engage with each other in order to not only live in a coexistence reality, but first live in a co-resistance reality. To resist the oppression, the systems that are not good for any of the people at the end of the day. And for us at the Rossin Center, dialogue is not always good. Sometimes we think dialogue is perfect. But dialogue can also be harmful. If it's not done well, and maybe you can think about different dialogue from your own context, or if dialogue doesn't challenge the status quo, it can be continuing these systems of oppression. It's not enough just to bring Israelis and Palestinians together and they talk and they eat together and sing together. It's not enough. We have to together resist these oppressions in order to create a new reality. This is just some of the work of the organization, and you can find some more details in the leaflet. And just as for me personally, it can cost to be involved in this work, and other people know the cost. But I have colleagues, Israeli colleagues, who know of friends who got killed in October 7th, like Vivian, who was in the movie. And I have a Palestinian colleague who lost 33 members of her family in Gaza. This is the type of people I have the privilege, the honor of working with. This is the work that we need to do in Israel and Palestine. But I also want to ask you. At the moment, every day there's about 100 Palestinian children who are killed and injured. Every day. Within the past 2 days of this conference, or the 3 days I've been here, 100 every day. This is also having repercussions on, as we heard this morning, about legal structures, not only of international courts, but also here in France. And also these connections between these right-wing fascist movements. They are working very much well together. They're organized. So our call for reconciliation and justice as Christians or fellow human beings is an urgent call. But my question to you, and there's been great conversations throughout this conference, but it's what are you going to do about it? I had to ask myself that. Do you know who you are as a Protestant church? Are you going to act on those values if you do not? And most importantly, I think, are you willing to pay the price?
Repeat, please.
Or are you willing to pay the price, the cost? So I'll finish it here. But if there's specific questions about the Rossin Center, I think we have just 5-10 minutes to engage with one another. And thank you for the translation.
Questions. On peut avoir 20 minutes de questions.
Thank you, John. Actually, I got interested in the educational situation. Would you be able to say how is the curriculum in Jewish school, for example, today in Israel, talking about Palestinians and history of Israel and Palestine? What are the children told, and what would the context of your work be in the system?
Yeah.
And maybe also the schools, are they the same for Jewish, Palestinians, or does it work?
So the schooling system, this is only within the state of Israel, right? I'm focused, this is where we work.
Yeah.
You have the Israeli secular school system. You have the Israeli Jewish Orthodox school system. And of course, different schools within each of those categories. You have the ultra-Orthodox Jewish school system, which is independent. You then have the Palestinian national school system. And then you have the Palestinian Christian school system. Lots of the Christian schools are very well known in these areas. And then you have international sort of the lycée français, these types of schools, or the Anglican schools. So various different curriculums within each of the school systems. But those under the national supervision, so to speak, we work in the secular and the Orthodox Jewish school systems, and we work in the Palestinian national school systems and the Christian school systems. I know it's a lot of details, I'm just trying to paint you a picture. But those who are subject to the Ministry of Education have very little education when it comes to the Palestinians or Palestinian identity. They wouldn't even say Palestine or Palestinians, they say Arab. So the whole education system is very much dehumanizing and creating, more hatred and division and separation. And these people also won't meet until they're, one's a soldier and one isn't, or in university. So the damage has been done. And statistically, the younger generation are more right-wing and racist in Israeli society than their older, than their parents. This is alarming if this is the situation. And this is why we're trying to at least push back as much as we can within the Ministry of Education. This means we also have to be a bit careful what we say and what we don't say. But these are just some of the situation. And the Christian schools are very afraid. They don't want to teach about identity or speak about historical narratives. And they just want sort of good grades, and that's it. Keep your head down, no problems.
You were talking about fascism. And we are seeing fascism everywhere in the world coming up. And there's a little booklet of Umberto Eco with 14 points of fascism, and when you keep Trump next to it, he's you can coche toutes les cases, check every point. And I'm very much concerned by this question, and I would like to hear you how you see fascism in your country, in this your situation, and what are the tools. Maybe you can detail a bit about the tools you see how to fight against it.
Yeah. So at least the fascism we're seeing amongst Israeli society, it's not something new necessarily. But we're seeing a clear attack on freedom of speech, which, to what extent, now it's also affecting Israelis. That's why it's become more of an issue. Beforehand, it was always Palestinian, so it's fine. But now it's also affecting some Israelis. And it's an attack on freedom of speech, the Ministry of Education, and the legal system. There's an attempt to completely, basically control and change the way the Israeli legal system operates. And of course, they're doing it violently and aggressively. So this is the trend. And at the moment, there's a lot of protests amongst Israelis about the judicial system. Big protests. People think it's about the war. Some it is, and some is not connected to the war. It's about the judicial system. And what we're trying to do, at least, is create more coalitions, because the fascist right-wing movements in Israel are very organized, clear goals, well-funded, and a lot of ideological sort of morale and energy. Those who are in the other camp are not organized, not have the tough ideology behind it, and are not well funded. But what we're trying to do, at least, is create these coalitions in order to fight back in the Ministry of Education, but there's other through the legal system or through other political means. But again, without the support from the international community, it's very difficult. And at the moment, the international climate is one of pro-fascism, which of course will, at the end of the day, result in the loss of Palestinians' lives, as we see today.
Maybe yes, just a question, because you were asking what are we going to do. But what is your hope? What is your own hope? Is to make one society with everybody in a peace? Like we could understand from Jean-Pierre that it was just a dream this morning. Or really fight to get 2 states? But how to have 2 states, let's say, being able really to live together? Because in Gaza plus Cisjordania, just like that, how can we just think that these 1967 borders are going to help some people to be able to work on something sustainable, you know?
Yes.
So, yes, working for something, what are you going to do, but for what?
Yes.
That would be more the question I would ask you.
Yeah. Is it okay if I answer you with a story?
You can, yeah.
Many times we get asked about 1 state, 2 state, 3 state, federation, so on and so forth. I had a cousin. Every Saturday we would go to my grandmother. Teta Samira is her name. Samira is her name. Teta is grandmother. Teta Samira would prepare 2 days before Saturday the most delicious food you would ever taste in your life. The whole family come together. But I had one cousin. He would not sit at the table. He would not eat any of the food. You know, this is food she preparing for 2 days, delicious, healthy, Palestinian food. He would not want to eat. So one of my uncles would say, come on, do you want rice? No, I don't want rice. Do you want stuffed zucchini? No, I don't want stuffed zucchini. Do you want stuffed potato? No, I don't want stuffed potato. I don't want. The problem wasn't the options. The problem wasn't the number of solutions. The problem was the behavior of the cousins. Eventually, my grandmother came, took him, put it on the table, put the food on the plate, and he started to eat. I take this as an analogy. We have lots of solutions, but this is not the time to talk about solutions. We're at the moment, I think, as I mentioned, there's I think a genocidal war happening. That should be the first thing we're trying to stop. After that, we need to put also pressure to put at the table, but until then, it's not about 1 state, 2 state, 3 state, 4 states. It's about desire at the moment. I hope that answers the question.
Jean a une question.
J'ai une question. My question is, how can you ask the international community for support when the international community is no longer a community? And I think that's a question for all of us, it's not just for you.
Yeah, I will translate it first. I think there are international communities, plural. I just think there's at the moment a crisis in the West. But when I think about the international community, there's a very clear consensus about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. You see it in the voting in the UN. Most countries agree on where to go. But there's some countries that are not interested. The US. But also the Europeans are not necessarily enthusiastic.
No.
At the moment, it doesn't look like there's going to be an immediate change, but this is where we need to do the work in Israel and Palestine, but you need to do the work in France. And elsewhere in Europe, I know some of you are connected also to Germany or to Switzerland. So it's about building that communities and movement, because there's a very clear way forward for this conflict. It's just being blocked by the moment the superpower, which is also in decline. And also there's a rise of the global south that is coming through. So it's going to be a rocky few months and years.
Can I speak?
Abdel Fattah.
You can if you want. So one question would be, what is the best moment you have? What is the best moment you have that you are proud of during your work? And what was the worst situation you were in during your work?
Yeah. Good question. We're working with school principals, and we use for the school principals, in order to get them to work together against fascism and right-wing politics and to a new vision, we use a trauma-informed dialogue, because everyone is traumatized. Just looking at the news, and 2 Israeli principals out of the group of 16 said, "Khalas, like now, enough. We are now going to, in our Israeli school system as much as we can, try and shift the perspective when it comes to Palestinians, human rights, talking about the West Bank and Gaza. You know, in Israeli schools, they have a map in the classroom. There's no West Bank and Gaza. And to hear that the 2 Israeli principals are going to do this is, okay, good. This is something I can work with. The more difficult moments is when, we get attacks by people in right-wing organizations that are saying, these people are dangerous for Israel and the state, and don't trust them, and you don't know what can come out of this, because there's also an attempt to close the space for civil society, for NGOs.
Can you tell us about your project in Ramleh City? Because we are going to support it as ACO, Action Chrétienne en Orient. I will speak about it.
Ramleh is a city next to Lid, and which is another city, and the airport. It's 5-10 minutes from the airport. And it's an old city that used to be Palestinian. And in 1948, during the Nakba, they forced the inhabitants to walk all the way to the West Bank. And there's a story about the house there where there was a Palestinian family. They got kicked away to Jordan. And the new Jewish refugee family from Bulgaria got the house. They bought the house from the state. And in 1967, the Palestinian, the boy of the family goes to the house, knocks on the door, and the person who opens it is the daughter of the Jewish family. It's not a romantic story, but they develop a friendship. And she invites him, and he sees the old home that he grew up as a kid, and nostalgia, and so on and so forth. And then they left. He left, but they maintained in contact, in a relationship. Very complicated friendship that they had. And because of the friendship, the Jewish girl eventually inherited the house from her parents. And she said, "I cannot live in this house." So she decided, with the Palestinian who became a man, to use the place. She wanted it for dialogue. He wanted it for empowerment of the Palestinian community who managed to stay in Ramleh. And they named the house the Open House of Ramleh. And this is the work that they did for years. There was an organization, but the organization got into financial problems. So they came to the Rossing Center and said, can you take over the activities of the house because we, the organization no longer has funds. So we said, of course. So at the moment, we are working with the Israeli and Palestinian groups there. And you also have to understand that even for Israeli Jews, Ramla is discriminated. You have a lot of the Sephardic Jews who live in the city. You even have Jewish communities from Uzbekistan, Jewish communities from India. So even they are discriminated economically within Israel. So it's a very working class city and mixed. And we have a women's group there and we have a cultural group there. And when I say we do the dialogue, we also do a lot of internal dialogue. Because, again, there's different needs for the different populations. And because the Palestinian population there is also Palestinian and also in a very poor city, they need extra support in terms of giving them practical skills, whether it be getting a job, or health tips, or whatever, legal aid. So this is the type of work we do in Ramla, in order to foster more of a community there that believes in the values that we do share. So it's an amazing house, and if you do come to Palestine, Israel, you're more than welcome to visit the house as well to hear the story. That's very short. Thank you.